Hello and welcome to another episode of Pause for Payments. I'm Kristy Duncan. I'm really excited today to have with me Margaret Weichert, who's Managing Director for North America and Payments Lead at Accenture. And she is based in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Margaret.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Kristy.
So delighted. Today, we're going to talk about pandemic and payments and where things are going and the convergence of two super cycles, one being the neo-normal and the other being the battle for the experience. And clearly this pandemic, I think, has highlighted both. So we've entered now the post-digital age of payments, whether we like it or not. And going forward, we really are starting to explore, will banks drive the incredible innovation agenda that has fueled this industry, or are the banks going to become the Kodaks of the 21st century? The good news is we have some clues to where this story might end. So the banking industry can still write the next story of payments by innovating quickly and collaborating. But the decisions that we're now going to make will determine if we can go back to the future. So let's start by just kind of setting the stage here. Margaret, do you want to talk about some of the recent ways that big tech and non-banking players have significantly changed the market?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important is when banks think about payments, they tend to get very product oriented, think about discrete payment products as very unique things. So credit cards as very distinct from deposit access products like debit cards, very distinct from how they think about their merchant acquiring business. And what we've seen in general is sort of the neo-normal already happening before the pandemic was a trend toward convergence that is blurring the lines between a lot of these capabilities. That went into hyperdrive during the pandemic, where consumers aren't thinking about, I want to have a card product today. They're thinking about, I need to get something done today. It might involve paying for things, but that's not what excites me. What excites me is getting my, I think to the beginning of the pandemic, the things I needed because I couldn't go out and get them done as a service. I was buying a new hair dryer. I was buying pet grooming accessories so I could take care of my dog at home. And what we're excited about are these discovery activities. Oh, I can discover how to groom my pet today, and I might look at a YouTube video. I might need to purchase something, and I might want to put it on credit, or I might want to pay out of my checking account. What big tech has done is really be thoughtful about that end-to-end commerce experience and then bake payment seamlessly behind the scenes. Amazon did a great job of that when it came to buying food. Instead of going to the grocery store, players like Uber Eats and Instacart changed how the solutions worked. And, my cell phone became an important part of that experience. And in some cases, Apple Pay was the seamless solution that enabled me to buy groceries. Or in other cases, my PayPal wallet seamlessly worked into that. And they made it so easy for me to have an idea of what I needed as a consumer and go all the way to execute it. And payments were almost invisible.
I love that. Yeah, it goes back to the concept of embedded payments. And you're right. I want to go and buy something. I don't want to go pay for it. I just want to go and have that whole
I want to have it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I just want to take a taxi. I just want to get from here to there. And I don't want to worry about
the payment. Fumble with a card or think about which account it goes on. I can set it and forget it.
Yeah, I love that. Set it and forget it. And I tell you, every time I get out of a regular taxi these days, I I have actually almost jumped out of the taxi and the guy says, wait, stop, you have to pay. Because I forget, because I
Right.
use the Uber all the time. So yeah, it really changes our whole experience for the better. So it's interesting that the big techs and the fintechs are doing that, and it's really changing the whole customer experience on its head. So when do you think it makes sense to collaborate versus compete with these big techs? What about the other players, like some of the other non-banks?
Well, I think and I do spend a lot of time talking to clients about this particular subject. And I think every player in a world that's enabling apps that do a host of things and that are bringing and converging a range of solutions beyond specific, industries or kind of traditional product dimensions, every player needs to think about that. And when I think about my own financial services experiences, I think of a great example. My bank is not, trying to compete directly with PayPal or Apple. And they may feel kind of a little conflicted about where PayPal and Apple might be competing with the bank, but they've made it really easy for me to take the cards in my wallet, my digital wallet at my bank, and push those cards into other people's wallets. So when I talked about my Instacart experience, I think Instacart makes Apple Pay really simple, but my bank had already made it really simple to get my 16-digit credit card number for my bank issued credit card into that wallet. And so they were present, even though another player facilitated that. Same thing with my PayPal wallet. I used to have my checking account kind of front and center because that's how I signed up. And I actually had an Amex card in that wallet. But since my bank actually enabled it to be really easy, one click, put all my bank cards into that wallet, now my bank card is top of that PayPal wallet. And so that's an example where something might be a threat in one context, but once it is inevitable, the banks and other players in the ecosystem need to not, have wishful thinking about putting a genie back in the bottle. They need to say, okay, how do I stay relevant to the customer in that commerce experience, even if I don't control it?
Yeah, it's a whole new paradigm. It's a whole new world, isn't it? So interesting. Well, I love this idea of the banks collaborating with the e-wallets, and certainly that will help to streamline that customer journey and improve the customer experience going forward. It's a win-win on all sides, I think. So it looks like the fintech players are making a huge impact on the B2B side as well. And we haven't talked a lot yet about B2B. Do you want to shed some insights there, Margaret?
Sure. This is another trend that's been happening for a while that accelerated during the pandemic. So on the merchant side of the business, there have been players really innovating to provide a broader range of solutions to particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, and create solutions that work differently, both at the physical point of sale and maybe most importantly in the digital point of sale. Buy now, pay later is one of those examples where, although you might say it's kind of an issuing solution, really, the moment of truth happens on the merchant side, that it's about buying the thing I want at this moment and then presenting an opportunity to get credit just for that purchase. It's a just-in-time delivery capability that I think a lot of cloud-enabled solutions, software as a service providers have just made it really seamless to fit in there. In the true B2B space, and even with larger merchants, when accounts payable and accounts receivable had to work from home, all of a sudden the paradigms that used to be about the cost of check processing or the cost of invoice management became about more than just a cost play. They came about, I can't have checks going into somebody's home if people are working from home. I can't secure that. I can't manage it. So I need to digitize it and think differently. And that, I think, was a sea change in a lot of the behaviors, certainly in North America, around paper-based invoice and check payments and billing processes that got jump-started all the way up, regardless of whether you're talking small business or large business.
Well, that's such a huge opportunity to digitize. And yeah, I heard about the banks in India running lockbox operations when everybody went into lockdown. You're right, you can't send these checks to people's houses in India, and half of them didn't have computer facilities or internet at home, and you couldn't do that.
Yeah, and if you needed to social distance, either your volume in those facilities was going to drop dramatically, or you'd be putting the workers at risk.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about time we went digital. I think we saw a similar thing in Canada with our check volumes after the 9/11, because for 9/11, before then we were flying big bags of checks between processing centers and between banks across the country. And we came to realize that was not sustainable. We needed a better, way to do this.
Yeah, and like many things, the long pole in the tent wasn't technology, it was regulatory in nature. Both in the US and in Canada, our governments needed to make regulatory changes to allow the checks to clear digitally versus physically. And I think we will see a lot more of those kind of considerations coming out of this post-pandemic period.
Well, goodness knows we all look forward to that. So here's supporting our regulators to help make that happen and pave the way. That'll be fantastic. So we talked a little bit about e-wallets. Do you have further thoughts about these digital mobile wallets and when we might start seeing widespread usage and adoption?
So I think it's a question that people have been asking for literally, dozens of years. And one of the things really has to do with what I talked about earlier, which is what ignites interest in the customer who's making the payment is almost never the payment itself. And so it really is a battle for experience. And I don't think that, the big techs or the wallet players have a monopoly on understanding experience. And so really looking at what's changed even in the last few years is both vertical and horizontal integration. If I think about my phone, I've got, I don't know how many apps on my phone. Probably about 20% of the apps on my phone have been there for years, and they're sort of foundational. But over time, how those apps interact with each other and new apps has changed. And that is kind of emblematic of what's changing in experience. So if you think about every one of those apps as kind of a form of a wallet, but the Uber wallet is my phone. So basically anything my phone can do is functionality that can be added in and absorbed into the customer experience. So during the pandemic, you might have gone to an outdoor restaurant and there weren't menus anymore because QR codes became, how you access the menu. Well, 10 years ago, the phone was not going to be able to read a QR code just by turning the camera on. But now all I have to do is point it and my phone becomes a QR code reader. to me, that it's really, really important to think about all the functionality in the device as part of what could be part of the experience. So audio is part of it, how things integrate with Siri and Alexa has become part of how these experiences are evolving. And we need to think, as folks in the payments industry, what are those things that are in the phone? Authentication is something that there's all kinds of things that the phone can do differently to authenticate and make transactions more secure. Are there innovations we could drive around that leverage the capabilities and make the payment itself more secure, easier to access, more flexible? And so, I'm not exactly answering your question. I'm kind of opening it up to say we as an industry need to think much more expansively about what technology can enable to make experiences more seamless, more intuitive, and almost more invisible. But, because our business models require us to be connected there, we've got to figure out how do we stay part of that change.
Yeah. Yeah. And because we certainly don't want to be left behind, but there is a huge risk now because so many of these players are jumping in and reimagining this whole customer experience with all of the new amazing technologies and things to support them. And you're right, QR code's a great example. Authentication's another one. Yeah, I love that, last year or the year before when MasterCard announced the MasterCard tone, so that you would hear when your payment had been successful. And, that was a breakthrough. I thought, oh my gosh, now we've got not only trademark logos, but now trademark sounds.
Yep. Yeah.
So interesting. So this has been really, really eye-opening, Margaret. I love your insights to the future and where the market's going and all these new players and how they're bringing value to the customer experience and the payments experience as well. Do you have thoughts about what new big things we might see in payments in the next couple of years that we should be getting ready for?
So when I think about the things I'm most excited about, I think about the combination of unmet needs and the art of the possible. And there are a couple of things that I think have really become clear in the pandemic that relate to parts of our population that are very poorly served by some of the more traditional views of payments. And so while the world moves very digitally, not everybody in the world has, strong, always on, easily accessible, cost-effective digital access. So thinking about how do we bridge the solutions that are kind of digitally native to be relevant to people who we don't live in the matrix yet. We live in the physical world. And so bridging the gap between the digital and the physical, I think, is an area of really interest, of great interest to me. And there are players throughout the world doing great things in that space. They're looking at how do we serve underserved populations with better credit access solutions, with better transaction solutions. How do we leverage mobile devices to do more from a true banking perspective? And I'm really bullish, even in places where in Europe, they're, particularly in the Nordics, a lot of questions about, well, cash is going away. It's completely eliminated in theory, but what they found in practice is that notion of a completely digital economy, no cash, left people behind, and they had to backtrack on that. I think that all presents great opportunity for us as innovators around payments to think about serving those customer segments.
These are really great insights, Margaret. And you're right. I saw that note about the Nordics was kind of backing away a little bit from their cashless society objectives, because you're right. There could be sections of the population who, that's not as inclusive for them because of technology, or because of, a fear of technology, or lack of comfort level with it, or lack of access. And there's always going to be those people who continue to believe that cash is king.
Right.
And right.
Well,
And
when
like,
the power goes out, right?
yeah,
When the power,
yes,
if there's a flood, how do you pay? Cell
exactly.
towers go down. How do you pay?
Exactly. So that backup is always, always valuable, even if we are in a totally digital world. Um, and I think that financial inclusion is something that we need to continue to keep our eyes on, because we have to, as a society, include all people, and different markets are impacted by financial inclusion to different degrees. But in Asia, it's more of a, more prevalent than here, the fact that they've got a higher population of people who are financially excluded, if you will.
Mhm.
So thank you for reminding us that we need to be inclusive in our thinking for all people to have access to payments one way or another. This has been a great discussion, but I'd like to switch gears for the last question and ask you a question that I ask all of our Pause for Payments amazing women leaders. And I want to ask you if you could share, you've had this fantastic career that has spanned payments and beyond, and now you're just in this really exciting role, which I'm so jealous of. But Margaret, are there some pearls of career wisdom that you could share with the rising stars in our audience?
Um, it's a great question. And I think one of the things that probably there's two camps in sort of career management. There are folks who really plan out their careers, and there are folks like me who I view my career as a series of options and opportunities to solve problems. And I think there's an element of my career that matches how innovation happens even in the payments industry itself, which is I always want my career choices to give me optionality for a future that's different than the one I'm in today. And I want them to be a positive contributor to my network of people with whom I might want to work. And so maybe the thing that most characterizes my career is I treat roles as important, but not kind of predominant in my decisions. And I think about my network and my network platform maybe more than I think about any particular role. And what that's meant is I've said yes to things that maybe didn't look on their surface to be a straight line path from point A to point B, but I have gained something that improved my, network, improved my knowledge, and maybe most importantly, my experience and my humility about constantly learning, so that I don't get comfortable that I know it all, because I'm constantly forced to think about using my network to fill in gaps in my knowledge, to enable me to learn, enable me to support my clients or my employer.
I love that. It's so true. And you're in such a great role now as a consultant to get, contracts and clients from different corners of the payments market. And that's what I found when I consulted too, is that each project builds on experience and knowledge, and helps you put together more pieces of the jigsaw puzzle is this whole big payments ecosystem.
Yeah. And frankly, that's what probably is my greatest expertise today, which is as an integrator and a dot connector, as opposed to deep knowledge in any one particular thing.
I love that, the dot connector.
Yeah, job description.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. Yeah, I used to tell people I wasn't a project manager, I wasn't a manager, I was just a traffic cop saying, okay, you do this, and I'll connect you to this person. Well, what a great career and what a great story, Margaret. Thank you so much for sharing. This has been
a pleasure.
Well, it has been a great discussion, and I always enjoy discussions with you because you've got such great insights, into parts of the industry that I don't have access to. And I love your thinking about where the market's going in terms of, really focusing on that experience and focusing not on the payment, but, what the customers are trying to accomplish, which isn't, you don't wake up in the morning saying, I want to make a payment today.
I want to pay today. It's like, I just want to get stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's an experience or a service or a product. Yeah, I just want to get stuff done for sure. Well, thank you for sharing. This has been a fantastic discussion.
No, my pleasure. Thank you to you and to Women in Payments. I've really appreciated this network. And I love what you do here.
Oh, thanks for that, Margaret. This has been a great discussion. Thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. I encourage you to join us online for the many other Pause for Payments webinars that we host with inspirational women from around the world of payments. It's been delightful. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Have a great day.